let's talk use and non-use. Product use reflects when it is, of course, acquired and used. Non-use reflects when a product is actively acquired and it is either not used at all or used less frequently than its potential, the relative average. So, a few questions to get us started. For you, what's the right number of books to have? What do the books you have in your house say about you? What do you keep and discard, and how? So think about that. How did you answer that question? So related to this question is an example of consumer behavior that caused a lot of discussion and strong emotions. So Marie Kondo markets a tidying process that's rooted in tidying one's emotional well-being as a way to better understand which belongings are best kept and how they should be arranged. Many of you likely know her KonMari method from the viral catchphrase, "Does it spark joy?" There's a TV series where she acts as a consultant for different households. In one episode, Kondo consults a household that had many, many books. Oh, excuse me. Kondo's book further suggests people should evaluate unread books, and that she usually had about 30 titles for herself. Well, it sparked quite a lot of discussion and very strong emotions, to put it lightly. In general, when you see strong emotions, you know we're looking towards some kind of norm, attitude, or value. And people don't like to be challenged when it comes to those. So the question I initially asked you, what's the right number of books? What do the books you have in your house say about you? And how they are kept or discarded really struck a chord with many people. It's not just a question of books. You can see how it's a question about you. It's an extended self in action. I have an article here from Lifehacker where author Nick Douglas gives his take. The readers of Lifehacker further express their own recommendations, motivations, values, and practices. So we can see it becomes not just a discussion on the number of books to have, but also things like, what does it mean to have a bookshelf in the living room? Is there such a thing as having a public display to look good to others' books? Is it my books, or do my kids' skinnier books count? As you may have guessed, her responses to the debate was to stress that people were taking what brings her joy as a hard and fast rule, rather than looking to their own individual practices on what brings themselves joy. So as an activity, so if you like, please feel free to look at the link here to see how people discuss things. You can also reflect on this question, or perhaps answer a different good service or practice of your choice. And here's another, by the way, extended self-application. Disposal often requires shedding or divestment action. So in the show, you can see how she applies the concept of the extended self to help people more easily part with things. We discussed how interacting with an object increases your sense of ownership and responsibility for it, that endowment effect. Her suggestions for people to say thank you is a kind of divestment procedure that lets people more easily detach their extended selves from said objects. So if you're interested, this clip does well showing how self-concept, lifestyle, and practices intertwine. Does it fit that you have 50 pens around, a jerry-rigged baby monitor cord to feel secure your baby is safe, or even 5,000 books? She explains her methods meant to guide people toward a fit that best suits them. So in sum, the Marie Kondo shows us one example of how people were confronted with their assumptions about the number of books one keeps and what it says about them. In general, practices are often linked to attitudes, norms, and values, where challenging it can spark pretty strong responses. It helps to keep your eyes out for different examples and see what underlying assumptions consumers have that power these practices. So a key question we first discuss when we talk use and non-use is whether consumers use your offering. So what does it mean to use? Yes or no may not be enough. Sure, knowing if someone has ever tried to use a product is important, but in what ways do we use or not use it? So was it consumed, one time, or limited time use, or more long-term use? So a piece of Halloween candy is likely to be eaten in one sitting and is not likely to be saved for very long as if it is. Your durable goods like washing machines should be lasting you for years. Vacuums, frying pans, bags, etc. may have different variations of what constitutes long use. Duration of use sessions. So how long does an average time of use take? So spray on cooking oils may be 10 seconds, while a person may want to read a book for longer. Binoculars can range from a few moments to a very long time depending on what you're looking at. Many types of services have an average time they anticipate consumer will need. Frequency of use relative to product or usage occasion. So certain products are more likely to be used more often. Perhaps your office chair at work. Others may be used less frequently, such as decorations you only use for Halloween, or the vacuum that's only there for deep cleans. Length of its lifetime. Certain products are meant to live longer than others. A disposable water bottle is only meant to last one sitting and may be used again a few times or upcycled. Other more durable goods like furniture are meant to last longer. Consumables often vary in how long their shelf life is, so flour is a little bit more durable. What about purpose? It's helpful to know what it's used for. Are they used for more than one thing, such as how vinegar can be used for cooking, disinfecting, and science experiments? Is it a matter that the product is used one way, and then it is used another, so sequentially? And what are the reasons for disposal? Is it another brand, a newer version, forgotten or lost? Is it voluntary? Is it something that's just used up? So you can analyze one of your own Chapter 1 consumption choices or something from your organization. In what ways would we want to measure how it was used? So I have examples at the bottom of my notes, but I highly encourage you to use your examples or just something of interest to you and analyze it for its use and see what you do with this. So here's an example of how perceptual forces matter when it comes to figuring out consumer use. A major issue for many organizations is encouraging consumers to make green choices, whether by buying green products or reducing their consumption of other things. However, consumers may not always respond in fully rational ways. For example, giving consumers the option to recycle may encourage what's called the licensing effect. And they actually use more. It's the, hey, there's a recycling bin. I'm recycling. It's not so bad if I use 2 or 3 paper towels instead of just 1. Another example was how the image of the firm can impact whether a consumer wants to aid in green efforts, such as using fewer paper napkins or reusing hotel towels. A recent study found that consumers actually react more poorly if they think the hotel asks you to be green, but they don't seem green themselves, especially if they're at a high-end hotel. All is not lost. These studies showed ways to reduce this contrast, where each discussed ways to reduce use, such as reminding consumers that recycling is less effective than simply reducing use. So yes, please feel guilty and use fewer towels. The others suggest you show commitment to being green to increase consumer compliance. Now let's take a look at what we mean by how we unpack use. When does research or planning tactics with others, it's important to all be on the same page by what a particular use entails. The important link, or rather, not important, the following link will take us to an old infographic that was made by the author, who has since recanted it because he no longer trusts the source data. I originally found it floating around Facebook, and fortunately the image I had included his webpage. He also asked we do not copy it. That's why we're going straight to his website and I didn't copy it on the slide. So let's take a look at the old version, and let me go ahead and switch this over. Well, I guess you'll get to see everything on my screen. So here we go. So take a look at these statistics. This is his old graphic. And what might each statistic suggest? How might it be ambiguous? So go ahead and pause me. And think about, as we go through these statistics, imagine what it suggests about the consumer, the practice of reading, what counts as reading, and how the data was collected, potential strengths and weaknesses. So go ahead, pause me, and take a look. All right, so hopefully you had a chance to take a look at some of these statistics and think about what they could mean. So I'll dissect a few and you can look in for yourself as well. So one of these first claims says 33% of high school graduates never read another book the rest of their lives. What might be the trouble? So how might you measure this? We can likely find out who hasn't read a book in the last year or even past 10 years, but how to measure for the rest of their lives? Right as they're passing away, maybe? Aggregated statistics suggest the structure of the whole, not a particular individual either. And what counts as book rating? Fiction, nonfiction, finished, only read part of it? Do e-books count? Some people may have a particular image of a fictional book or have a self-concept that, well, I don't read. They may forget that they read their Bible, a cookbook, a technical manual, and so much more. Would a comic book count? Well, depends if you want it to count. But we don't know what the original purpose of that study was for where they got that statistic. Second claim, 57% of new books are not read to completion. So is that of the readers, presumably? Are we again not counting particular kinds of books? A person may rarely read most books to completion if it includes non-fiction, but have a strong completion record for fictional titles. Are you presumably only counting personal reading? What about parents and grandparents or other relations that may complete a whole lot of books due to a high number of children's books? Are they outliers and shouldn't count? This claim, too, third claim, 70% of U.S. adults have not been in a bookstore in the last 5 years. So you may not have to fret yet if you're a book publisher, depending on the different channels you sell your books through. After all, you can buy books at grocery stores, book fairs, consignment stores, or other general purpose stores, regulating retailers, and more. And people may have trouble with this question if they are only envisioning more traditional bookstores like Barnes & Noble. As a quick example, I was talking with someone about their book habits, and at first they were like, oh, no, I haven't been to anything. But then they went, oh, wait, I guess that local library bookstore counts. These processes may be an issue if you were interested in any type of bookseller or book reading people do. And finally, we'll look at this one. 80% of families, of U.S. families that is, did not buy or read a book last year. The or can be read in two different ways. Is it additive where I am included as long as I haven't done at least one? Or is it more exclusionary where as long as you've done one, you're not included? It can be very different things. So, but what counts as a family? Any type of household relations? Does it mean only minors or very young kids? Are we again just thinking of, do all those kid books count or don't count, and that just means did a grown-up do it? So a claim not made and probably number of books read would be hard to measure. Again, we get that issue whether people consider completion or not and types of books. So presumably this is your own personal reading. Otherwise, the parent of a young child may not have read Goodnight Moon 28 times over the past 2 weeks, and as the joke goes, it's an outlier and should not be counted. But you can ultimately see how a single statistical label may mask all sorts of reading styles. The infographic unfortunately does not fully tell us the whole story, and many people, and the author included, found the original data sources may not be reliable. You'll notice Brewer's updated infographic has all the sources and statistics and are a lot more specific, making it much easier to know how the question was likely asked and what the implications are. And props to Rob Brewer on his correction post and creating a new one. I really appreciate that. And it keeps up the old one for us to kind of learn from just as he did. So in sum, there are lots of ways statistics can suggest or obscure different kinds of uses. And it's important to really understand the ways assumptions can bias us and our respondents. And effectively, these biases can bias our results. They can make it so that we don't actually know what our statistics are actually meant to mean. So here are some more statistics on U.S. consumer reading behavior from a 26 Pew study and a 2005 Gallup study, if you're interested after all that talk of readers and non-readers. You can see that they take the time to break apart different types of books, audiobooks, ebooks, and print books. And in the past slide, we even added a picture, an example of how independent bookstores are actually gaining resurgence. So these reflect use over time. Use can vary by brand or activity, so they may drop a brand but still use the same product category. These charts reflect different ways consumers may show affect or use with a brand over time. Notice how it's not simply a gradual increase in use, say panel 6, or perhaps use, but then an ending, panel 1 or panel 3, bloop. Sometimes we may have many of these where consumers may engage in regular brand switching or other rotations. It may be a matter of avoidance, boredom, or even annual parting to simply just having multiple good choices. So, an important part of use is studying use sessions, the timing and length of a particular use. Here's an example from Blackboard a few years back. So authentication issues were plentiful with multiple logins or connected services. This was a message from the U of A tech team back in the day. In order to minimize difficulty accessing Blackboard, please be sure to log out of Blackboard using the End SSO Session button located on the Blackboard logout page. Please watch this short video, no audio, for further instructions. Please check Acknowledge once you have read this message or it will continue to pop up. Thank you. The email suggests a consumer that either willingly or remembers to willingly end their session, or that the system has a presumed session duration that you may use for Blackboard. However, it had become apparent to the tech team that there are many users who do not follow those parameters. And personally, I knew at the time I left Blackboard up all day, which means I'd return, try to click on something, and learn my session timed out, then have to go and delete the relevant parts of my cache again. That notice, they said, in fact, was another example of how organizations often have to help guide their consumers on use. So you're probably wondering about this video right here. Well, the speaker discusses play sessions for video games. Many of the design principles and planning will also apply to many other types of products. Services and goods intimately involved in an experience must especially take heed. But even little things like waiting for your toaster to chime or other items will matter. How long and how often? So key takeaway, better knowledge of use means better design that integrates consumer needs and understanding of how we can set the product up for better consumer experience. So with that, next section we're going to talk about consumer uses in terms of, well, what do they do? How do they think to use? And especially how they tend to go off the rails on us sometimes and they get creative in ways we don't expect. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me. And if not, well, click on, see what things and look at your ideas, see where they take you, have fun with them, and well, take care.